Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm joined by Northeast journalism royalty and John Gibson today as we assess the latest goings on at Newcastle United and look forward to another challenging week for Newcastle, heading to Tottenham on Tuesday night on the back of what was a pretty demoralising defeat at St James's Park against Brentford on Saturday evening. Gibbo, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances. Having been battered at the match and demoralised at the match, because the way I looked at it, and this is utmost respect to Brentford, we've tried to say that St James's Park is a fortress, and at least we've got St James's Park where we get results that sort of balance out the fact we don't away from home. But that's not so this season, because we've lost to Arsenal, we've lost to Liverpool, we've lost to Aston Villa, we've lost to Barcelona, we've lost to Man City, all at St James's Park. Now, the only consolation there might be saying that you've lost to football royalty, if you like. They're the elite clubs. With utmost respect to Brentford, they don't come into that category in normal thinking, but we've now lost to Brentford, home and away, incidentally. So I was demoralised by that. Everything we talked about on the podcast and feared and prayed wouldn't happen did happen. We've given 19 points sacrifice from winning positions. In last 3 games, leaked 4 against Liverpool, 3 against City, 3 against Brentford. We're getting done at the back so easily. The front 2 couldn't burst a balloon. So it's. The 2 goals we got, one was from a centre-half and one was a penalty from Bruno. The front lads, then particularly 2 centre-forwards on scoring, but it's depressing. And what we're now fighting for, Mark, is to save our season. There's an SOS going out to save our season. Save it this week, because unless we get 3 points at Spurs, qualifying for Europe, we're not going to qualify for the Champions League. That, I think, we're 10 points behind, etc., etc. We haven't just got to make 10 points. The teams up there have got to drop them otherwise they go ahead, and that's just not going to happen. But to get into Europe at any extent, and I don't think we will the way we're going at this moment, but we've got to win at Spurs, and we've got to win at Aston Villa on Saturday, else we're out of the FA Cup. So this is literally by Saturday night, heaven forbid, but our domestic season could be over.
Well, I was going to say, the next 10 days, you could argue, are the biggest of Eddie Howe's Newcastle United reign. I know there's been a lot of talk about his future and a lot of comments online and in the media. And even Eddie's assessed them. He spoke about them in his post-match press conference on Saturday. He spoke about them at his pre-match press conference ahead of Tottenham on Tuesday night, and you kind of can't get away from it. You mentioned there, obviously, Tottenham Tuesday night, Villa Saturday night in the FA Cup, then Carabao away in the Champions League, and it feels like a massive 10 days, not just for the manager, but for the players as well.
For all of us, for us as fans, for the owners, for the players, for the managers, for the coaches, it is huge. It is the biggest negative period we've had since Eddie took over the job, because it's been all sort of guns and roses, guns blazing and roses thrown onto the pitch in adulation. But all of a sudden, the worst of reality is biting in, and there's no time to organise a response to it. The response has got to be immediate, and it is up to everybody, and it is starting at Spurs tomorrow night. It's up to everybody has a responsibility to do something about this current situation.
Well, Newcastle go into that game sat in 12th place in the Premier League table. They are now 10 points from the top 5, which is what John was just saying there about being that far away from the Champions League spots. They are 6 points from the top 7, which you'd imagine 7th place will be at least a European spot. It's 1 win in the last 8 games in all competitions, and 4 out of the last 5 they have lost. So confident it would be safe to say, amongst the fan base in particular, is it a low?
Oh, rock bottom. And I think it is with the players. They look absolutely devoid of confidence. We've talked about them feeling tired, but they also look as if they're low in the snake's belly. There's no confidence there whatsoever. And you wouldn't expect there to be. But I mean, we've talked about Eddie Howe's future. That is inevitable. Eddie's talked about it himself. Certainly, the fans on social media are all talking about it. Players, to a certain extent, have talked about it. We've had Kieran Trippier come out and say things, Bruno come out and say things. And it's about time the players took responsibility for what is happening, because it's not always down to the manager. But players get the manager the sack. I'm not talking about at Newcastle, a sweeping generalisation about football. And the only way the questions on Eddie's future will go away is through results. The only way they'll go away is through getting positive results. As you've already mentioned, Mark, Eddie's been talking about it himself on in his last two press conferences. I think his position is rock solid with the club, with the owners, etc., etc. But the fact that a growing number of fans are questioning whether he's taken us as far as he can will hurt him. He is loved having the fans wrap him in a warm embrace, if you like. The man that got us our only trophy for 70 years domestically, etc., etc. He's loved that. And regardless of him surviving this or not, what is happening at the moment with the fans will hurt him. There's no question. But I mean, in the business that Eddie's in, part of the territory is that you're under pressure with your job. At some stage, however successful you are, that's going to happen. I mean, he's an absolute legend at Bournemouth, where he took both as a player and then as a manager. As a manager, he took them from the brink of non-league football all the way up into the Premier League and establishing them in the Premier League. He is an absolute legend there, but the reality of this job, which will not be lost on Eddie, is that he was forced out at Bournemouth. He was, I mean, it's a matter of whether he resigned or whether it was a mutual agreement, but he was forced out of Bournemouth. Now, I believe because of what he's done for this club, he stands along with Harvey and Bobby Robson, let's say, and Kevin Keegan, as the greatest Newcastle managers of all time. You know what? Newcastle sacked Harvey. You know what? Newcastle sacked Bobby Robson. You know what? Kevin Keegan didn't get the sack here, but he felt there's cold steel elsewhere. It happens all the time. But what I would say, Mark, if I may, before fans think I'm actually talking as though I want Eddie out, is far from that. I urge everyone to beware of what they wish for, because it's very easy to be knee-jerk. It's very easy and tempting sometimes to sack a manager and say, oh, well, that's our problems are done away with. All of a sudden, instead of losing all the time, we're going to start to win all the time. Yeah. You've got to replace that manager. And how are you going to replace him with somebody better? And look at it another way. Eddie Howe would get a job very easily elsewhere because his stock's sky high. Yeah. Who would we get that's better than Eddie? We've got to be careful. The perfect answer for us, and the one everybody should be praying for, is that Eddie puts it right quickly. But it's right that everybody's talking about the manager because that's the way it is. And Eddie himself has proved that. But we need results. We cannot kid ourselves about that because, as you say, we can wake up after we go away next week, midweek in the European Trophy, and find we're absolutely rock bottom. Or we can suddenly find, if Eddie becomes the miracle worker he has done in the past, that we've got something at Spurs. We're still in the FA Cup, and we'll turn over the team from Baku when they come to St James's in the second leg. We hope, we pray.
We hope, yeah. I mean, we go into Tuesday night. I've got two more stats for you here. Newcastle's away form in the league. They played 12 away games. They've won 2. It's the 5th worst away record in the league. Tottenham have played 12 home games and have won 2. And that's the 4th worst record in the Premier League. So if I can part quote Gary Neville from a few years ago, in terms of home and away form, this feels a bit like dog and duck against Red Lion.
It does indeed. I mean, I described it in my Chronicle column as a match between two deadbeats. I mean, the record is that it's quite startling. Spurs' home record and our away record is literally the same. It's not just 2 wins out of 12. It's played 12, won 2, drawn 4, lost 6, 10 points. That's the Spurs home record and it's our away record. So if we are ashamed of that away record, what must they be of that when it's your home record, for goodness sake? I mean, it is a match between two sides, one dent and the other can't. I mean, it is really, really as desperate as that. And we would have a lot of fun with that if it wasn't so serious for us, because it is desperately serious. And it's therefore which team can book its current trend. Will it be Spurs that get a home win at long last, or will it be us who win on the road at long last?
And it's really weird, isn't it? Because you look at Spurs and the home record in the Premier League and you compare it with the home record in the Champions League. Now, I will say I've just got the results up here because I knew the record in the Champions League was far better. So they've beaten Villarreal, FC Copenhagen, Slavia Prague, and Borussia Dortmund without conceding a goal on the home patch. But much like Newcastle in terms of their away form, do you feel there's just a bit of a mental block when it comes to Spurs at home now?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a mental block with us away. But when your mental block's at home, it's worse because, as well, Mark, that's where your fan base is. And when you don't do it in front of your fan base, then the repercussions are ginormous. I mean, they've already supposedly signed up the saviour who was going to be Frank, and he's proven so far to be having a rough ride. And both are in desperate need. I would suggest their record is worse than ours because that's their home record. For goodness, we are complaining about having a away record like that. That's their home record. But as you're saying, it's peculiar because we've done okay in Europe. But I maintained, and I said so in this podcast ages ago, that it's a sweeping generalization in Europe until you get to the last 16. And from then onwards, it is easier competition, the Champions League, than the Premier League. Now, that sounds staggering because the Champions League is massive. But because they've now got all these extra clubs in it, etc. I mean, Newcastle have played 2 quality teams in the Champions League, which is Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona. The rest of them were very winnable, and we did, in the main, win. We suffer week by week in the Premier League a much greater challenge with all the sides we have played already and we're about to play than we do in the Champions League. And Spurs are finding it exactly the same.
They are. I have to ask you about team selection on Tuesday night. A lot of big decisions for Eddie Howe to take. I spoke to Lee Ryder on the Monday show earlier on, and he mentioned he was quite surprised Dan Burn wasn't at the starting lineup on Saturday. Could you see Dan Burn come back in the side at Spurs?
Yeah. I think Dan, because of what he represents, not just in ability, but in the local lad with a huge heart, the organizer, the carer, the man that cares passionately. He's a captain without the armband. Bruno's got it, and we're supposed to have so many of them. That's what Eddie used to always talk about. We've got leaders and captains all over the field, and Dan Burn is exactly that. I mean, we're almost at a situation where I was about to say, and I bit my tongue, and I was glad I didn't, but I'll say it anyway. Does it matter who's in the lineup? Because it's almost a matter of what you feel and you've got up here in your head as on ability in the lineup. Have you got the courage for the fight? Well, I mean, Eddie Howe who we've accused, we being the fans, I don't mean necessarily me or you, but the fans have been where he wouldn't try things. He has, in recent times, tried everything and it hasn't come off. He's had a flat back four, he's had a back five. He's tried Wissa centre forward with Waldemar just behind him. He then brought Asula on to play centre forward in the last game. He's tried everything without it working, but he's got to start all over again and try again because that's his job. I mean, I would be delighted to see Miley back, and don't ask us what position because he could play any of them. But I mean, if I could get Miley back, I would play him right back. And the reason for that is not because it's his best position, but it's because Kieran Trippier has got to be given a rest, bless him. It's like cruelty to animals at the moment. He is well past his sell-by date. He is finding it tough. You could say that he was involved in all their 3 goals on Saturday. So, I mean, if Miley come in for trips, I would be delighted. And I think Chow needs a rest. From that, the soaring standards he set when he first come in the team, he makes mistakes now. Yeah. So you could move Botman across. I know it's his wrong side, but he could do it. And you could go Miley, Botman, Byrne and Hall to try to give us some. And no doubt if the other one that come up at the press conference as possibly fit, may not be. If he had a hamstring, I don't know how he's going to be anywhere near fit, but it was Anthony Gordon. But if it was a hamstring, how on earth could he be available to play? But if he is, I think he'll play him because he loves him. I think he'd play Gordon. And I think Elanga, I mean, I could see Gordon on the left and Elanga on the right, and don't talk about through the middle because I've got no hope whether I go Wissa, Voltemade or Asula. That is a problem that is ginormous, and we've got to say of our own making because we chose them all.
I think it's probably unlikely by what Eddie said that Gordon will be fit, so you can probably assume Barnes will play left side of the front 3. But on the right-hand side, I mean, Jacob Murphy had a really difficult night on Saturday night. He didn't
desperate. Hooked by half-time, and Eddie loves him.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest, on the back of his goal, not that I'm saying he played brilliantly at Manchester City, but on the back of his goal in particular, I did think it was a good chance to play Elanga to give him a bit of confidence. So could you see a scenario where he comes in to the side on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I think he will come into the side. Murphy did nothing to justify staying in the side. He was hooked by half-time. I think Elanga will definitely start on the right. He was leaving the door open for Gordon. I can't see if he's got a hamstring, how he's got any chance at all. I think Harvey Barnes looks as if he's almost in need of a rest. He's had that wonderful purple patch when he scored all those goals and looks fabulous, but he looks mentally shattered as well as physically shattered, as does Chow, etc., etc. But I mean, I would play Miley if I could for trips. I would bring Byrne back. I'd play Elanga, and yes, I don't think Gordon will be fit. If he was, he would probably get in for Barnes. Barnes could probably do with a rest, but I don't think he's going to get a rest. The only way he could get a rest, and I don't think it'll happen, is if you played Willock out on the left-hand side. Yeah. But again, then what's going to be your midfield? I presume it's going to be Bruno and it's going to be Tonali and another, which possibly could be Ramsey.
Well, I've got to be honest, that would be my choice. I thought Ramsey looked quite tidy at times against Manchester City. I thought he's shown small signs, and I'm not getting carried away here, small signs of improvement. So I think you may well see him come in for Willock. But I actually thought Willock had one of the best of a bad bunch on Saturday. I thought he looked lively in midfield. But I am going to press you in terms of the striker. Who plays up front? Because I've spoken to people who've said that Asula should probably get a chance. But I think there's a lot of talk about how energetic he looked on Saturday and how much he got around the pitch. But I didn't feel as if he did loads with it.
No, but that is Will, isn't it? Bless him, Will. His biggest strength is he's got massive enthusiasm and he can run like the wind. That's his 2 biggest strengths. Without wanting to be cruel, The problem is when he gets the ball, his decision making is somewhat naive at the
Yes.
moment. And I can see why some people want to Sula. You know why? Because we're sick of Wisa and Walter. That's why. The best thing going for Will is the other two, because they couldn't burst a paper bag. And we are in desperate situation with those two lads. I mean, I've even thought, because I can't select the centre forward that I've got any faith in whatsoever, I've even thought, do we try again with the experiment of going for two, playing Wisa and Walter as a 10 and giving that chance again? That means somebody's got to be left out, either a winger or your third midfielder. But honestly, it's what he gets paid for, so it's up to him to decide what he wants to do. But I mean, the bottom line is, from being a club of number 9 legends and from having a bloke that scored 27 goals playing centre forward last season, we haven't got one out of Wisa, Voltemade, Asula, and Anthony Gordon, 4 people that can play centre forward, and there's not one of them would carry a lot of optimism with him if he was picked at Spurs.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with any of that. Thankfully, we're not the ones who have to make these big calls. It is down to Eddie Howe.
We didn't buy them, so we haven't got to decide. We didn't buy them, mate. I mean, who did is a totally a matter where nobody's going to, in the classroom's going to be shooting a hand up and saying, that was me, Governor, because you wouldn't want to, would you?
But there are, without question, big calls to be made ahead of Tuesday night. We hope it is a more positive result for Newcastle United. If it is, it feels like it'll be a bit of a launch pad for hopefully an improved run of form. If not, there's going to be more questions asked. The talk about the manager and certain players will increase. So it feels like a big game. But I feel as if the way things are at the moment, Gibbo, every game's a massive game for everyone involved in the club.
I mean, you so much apprehension when you face each game, because your faith is being eroded. You're beginning to say, what will I hang my hat on apart from blind faith? I'll hang my hat on blind faith, and I'll hang my hat on loyalty. My loyalty to the club, because it's a club I love, not the loyalty of the players to the badge. But I tell you what happens now. If I was a player at Newcastle United, I'd say every fan that's at Spurs or back home watching it on television will look at every single player of the 11 on the pitch and judge them not on ability, but on caring, on determination, on bravery, on wanting the ball and looking for the ball, not hiding away. And if I was a player, I would be going out there and saying, I want to save my reputation. I'm not going. It may be a team game. You may be able to hide behind the result and say, well, it's other people's faults, not just mine. But each player that pulls on that black and white shirt at Spurs will be judged on what they give the badge, not necessarily on what the form's like, but what they give the badge. Because your form can go in and out and in and out, but your attitude is a different matter. You can control your attitude. You can have a good attitude regardless. You can't hit good form regardless all the time, but your attitude can be spot on. First things first, we must get players with the right attitude. And I tell you what, I'll be watching every one of them with that. And no doubt all the Newcastle supporters will be, because it's crunch time now. You're carrying our hopes. You're carrying our team's colours. You're carrying our dignity and pride. Earn it, show it. That's what I'm looking for. I can forgive form, because you cannot be great all the time. And maybe the opposition don't allow you to be great, Mark. If with Spurs, they probably will allow you, but with another club. But what I'm looking for is big hearts, caring, no hiding, going out there and carrying the flag up top. The sort of thing that Bruno and Hall are doing at the moment. I don't know how many more I can mention, but I can certainly mention those two.
That feels like the perfect way, that rallying call from Gibbo to end this podcast of the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'll be joined by Give Me Sport editor and Tottenham Hotspur fan Lee Wilmot for a view from the opposition ahead of Tuesday night's game. Keep an eye out for that episode. And we'll be back later in the week, looking forward to, keep saying this, a massive game for Newcastle United when they go to Aston Villa in the FA Cup 4th round. Gibbo, thanks for joining us. Thanks to everyone for listening or watching. We'll see you next time.